3 years ago, TEMIC made some big waves with the debut of their first album, Terror Management Theory. Now, they came out with this unique, punchy, powerful, emotional sound that's kind of atypical of prog, and they definitely carved out their own little niche there in their own little space. So, of course, expectations are going to be pretty big as they come out with their second album entitled Ceiba, which focuses on themes of loss and grieving and people passing away, the human experience, because what, we're all headed that direction someday, right? So this is a universally applicable concept album. And again, the expectations are high. Right now, all evidence is that TEMIC is going to meet those expectations. And I had the pleasure of sitting down to talk with keyboardist, founding member Diego Tejeida about his experiences working on this new album, how it differs from their debut, his experiences working with some of the biggest names in prog, and just his philosophy on life and his approach to creating music. So sit back, relax, and here comes my conversation with Diego Tejeida of TEMIC. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so glad we were able to connect. Appreciate you coming on in the show and everything like that. So, welcome. I hope your day's going well.
It's going well. It just pretty much started. I am basically a night owl, so I always go to bed around 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning. So yeah, this is still kind of early for me, but yeah, so it's all good. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, excellent. So here we go. I mean, obviously, what we're here to do is talk about the new, and it's just a matter of, and I want to make sure I get this right, because I've only ever seen it in print and never heard it spoken. I've always said TEMIC.
That's perfect. TEMIC.
Okay.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yes. Now the name of the album. That's gonna be the next challenge.
Yeah. You know what? I didn't get to pronounce. I'm smart enough to look up what it was because I didn't recognize the term, and I've wanted to go with Ceiba.
Close enough. It's Ceiba. Yeah, like
Ceiba,
say
okay.
you say something. Bah,
Yeah.
Ceiba. Yeah,
There we
correct.
go.
Perfect.
Okay.
Very good. Yeah.
It is a tree with which I am not familiar. So interesting choice for album cover for a song title or an album title rather. When you're talking about life and talking in particular about loss and death. So
Right.
um, perfect analogy. I like it, and it works well. So circling back, we go back to the first album, and I know that was kind of connected to a particular moment in your life. Now, Seba is connected to the theme of loss. For you, what was the emotional starting point? What was the impetus to go this direction with it?
It's a funny thing, this album, for instance, Ceiba, there was a lot of more collaboration. And we initially, I talked to the guys at the beginning, and the initial direction was make an album about forms of attachment.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like, when you start discussing writing for a new album, I think it's always a good idea to have sort of a vision of where you want to go.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, okay, yeah, sounds good. Then I started, doing my bits, writing my bits, and Eric started writing his bits, and then, Fredrik, his lyrical contributions as well. And when I was working on my contributions and the things that I wrote for the album, I started realizing that this was the underlying theme. And I think that's a beautiful thing when you don't necessarily control the creative process, but the
Right.
creative process kind of tells you where to go. And you listen because sometimes we're so like, what would the word, stubborn to follow a certain pattern or a certain path. And then you realize, no, actually, I'm actually talking about this. And for me, that's kind of the writing process, especially lyrics, that I sometimes, what most of the time, start with words without thinking too much about it, more like a stream of thought, especially when I'm working on the demos, that I don't want to spend a long time working on the lyrics from the beginning. It's just whatever comes to mind, and I just, normally it's a word or some phrases or just the ending of a, the vowels of a phrase or the chorus or whatever. And then I step back and I start realizing what the song is actually about. So the funny thing is, like, I started realizing that was on my mind, and that was the thing that was coming out a lot. I don't necessarily hide this. I'm a big fan of psychoanalysis. I mean,
Right.
I have an analyst for 10 years, so there's this kind of things that come up very, very commonly on my sessions too, talking about loss, talking about dealing with loss.
Right.
And my wife is studying a master's in thanatology, so it's a thing that is present in my life a lot.
Yeah.
And most of the time, the things that I'm going through kind of manifest on the creative process. So that was my part. But then it was funny also to see, the contributions for Eric and the contributions then from Frederick to realize, oh wow, we are connecting here, and it's
Right.
it's very interesting. We live in different countries. We have very different lives, very different
Yeah.
personal lives. Eric has 3 kids, and he does all these things. He's playing with Nimmo's band right now, and then also the guys who are in Norway. So we have very different lives, and it's very
Yeah.
interesting to see that we connected on that without necessarily wanting to. So it just wrote itself in a way, if you
Yeah.
if you know what I mean. Yeah,
It's like a long distance psychic synergy you had going on there. That everybody somehow landed on the same page without intending to.
absolutely. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what happened. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, it's such a universal experience in a human life that the fact that we're going to experience loss of some kind, and I can appreciate too in the press information that you guys would describe, the idea that loss isn't always just people. You can lose a lot of different things. You can grieve over a lot of different things, and I appreciate that perspective. And also, I think you guys are framing it less as just dwelling on what is gone, but more like the idea of this is kind of a rite of passage for people, that this is a transition.
Absolutely. And I think that comes from a personal point of view too. I mean, this is talking about, for instance, myself, my experience with loss.
Right.
Um, in general, I think people try to avoid talking about loss or try to avoid even looking at it. In the Western world, even though the album is not only about death, but death is often looked away for you. You're like, oh, you don't talk about that. You keep it quiet. You
Yeah.
don't, someone else's relative passed away. And you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to say. And people, kind of try to not deal with that. Um, and I think that feels isolating because then you see like no one talks about it. And when you go through that, you feel like, oh my God, am I the only one going through this? And I think when you realize that everyone goes through something like this, and there's various ways to actually deal with that, that is just as part of life, as natural as living. That's just basically what it is. For me, one of the experiences that impacted a lot uh, the creation of this album and inspired a lot was the first time I experienced Day of the Dead in Oaxaca. I'm from Mexico, Mexico City, but Mexico City is just a big city with uh, just a ton of really fun things to do, but it's a city nonetheless. I lived in London for a long time. Different vibes, but still a city. And the
Yeah.
vibes of big cities is kind of the same. My wife is from New York, different vibes, but a big city. Um, and the first time I experienced, like truly experienced Day of the Dead, Dia de Muertos, in a small town in Oaxaca, it was truly magical, but also it was a paradigm shift for me to see people in a graveyard and cemetery just having a great time. I was with my wife just walking through in the middle of the night and people just drinking mezcal and they saw us and there was a bunch of people having a party. There was this woman who was celebrating her parents and she offered us some mezcal and they were just getting us drunk. They were having a great time playing music, dancing. The kind of thing that if you mentioned that to Westerner saying, "Oh, I was dancing on my parents' grave," you're like, "Whoa, what's that?"
Yeah.
But it's very interesting. I remember coming back from that trip and being like, "Wow, what just happened?" Is you had a great time, you're partying. There's like bands playing in the cemetery at 2 in the morning, and people going crazy and having a great time. But at the same time, you remember this is also a party about death,
Yeah.
and I love
Yeah.
that feeling. It's hard to convey if you haven't been there, but I'm trying to explain it the best I can.
Sure. Sure.
Um, and that was one of the tracks from the album. What's the name? Night of Veils. That
Right.
literally, when I came back from that trip, I just wrote that track in like half an hour or something like
That's
that.
so
So
cool. Yeah.
so things that impact, and you realize that loss doesn't have to be a difficult, isolating, depressing thing. I think it's part of it, and coping with that is part of it, but it's also that we all go through that, and it's universal.
Yeah.
That's, just showing you how people from different countries, from different parts of the world in a band ended up sharing their own experiences through this album. And I think that's very powerful. And that's exactly what we're trying to convey.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's one of those nice ways of focusing on it differently, because the reason that the loss is felt, the reason that the loss hurts is because you had this blessing in your life. You had this person in your life. So why not remember what was great about them and the reason why it hurts for them to be gone?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
and whatever it is, as I mentioned, is not only about, losing someone, but also sometimes losing yourself,
Yeah.
losing a concept of yourself, that we not only lose people, we also lose who we used to be. We lose
Yeah.
our physique, we lose time, and the nostalgia where we used to live, we lose places. There's many things that constitute a loss. We lose significant others. It's part of life. And that's what makes you, I think, wise as well. Going through these
Right.
experiences as a human.
Yeah. So I'm curious too. I mean, as we talk about the idea that getting into this kind of topic is something that tends to be avoided by a lot of Western culture, was this something that was you or other members of TEMIC challenging themselves to put something out there that they're not used to discussing, or is this something just kind of processing what you're usually free? You know what I mean? Is that was that you opening up in a way that you don't typically do?
I mean, as I mentioned, in this case, the way the album came together, we wrote a ton over the
Yeah.
last 3 years. We actually, had to cut songs, a lot of them, like 5, 6 songs. Um, and it was mostly before realizing, okay, how many tracks we have. I made, a little Excel sheet. Miguel and I kind of put it together and have a little brief description what the song is about. I'm being seeing kind of, all right, this is a topic that is happening. So it was just a matter of, all right, this is actually, we're seeing this pattern that is happening.
Right.
From my perspective, from my contributions, I am very open about these things. For me, it's a thing that I discuss on a daily basis. I told you, look, I love hearing the latest topic my wife is discussing on her masters. And for me, as I mentioned, is a thing that I dwell on constantly or think about those things. And clearly, as I mentioned, when the writing process begins,
Right.
it just comes out. I don't try to control it. It's just a reflection of what's happening. And it almost like the song reveals itself. And all you have to do now is join the dots. It's like, oh, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
song is about this. Okay, I'm just gonna join the dots and make it nice and pretty, and the real work actually happens then, to find the lyrics, the rhymes, all those
Yeah.
things. That's the work. But the actual meaning, that's something that I don't think it can be controlled. In this case, it just happened to happen at the same time for all of us, and that was the interesting thing.
Yeah. I always wonder because, like, to a certain degree, it sounds like when you're in the flow, it goes pretty smoothly, and then maybe you can crank out a song in a half hour or something like that. Were there any songs in particular, either lyrically or musically, you found yourself really struggling to get it to come together the way you wanted it?
Yes, and it depends on the song, really. I
Yeah.
mean, there are some more honest and more raw songs in this album. Broken is one of them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to be the next single. I don't know when this is going to be released, but I am assuming in a couple of weeks because the next single is going to be Broken. That's released on the 24th, 25th of August. Don't quote me on that. Um, so, yeah, that song we were together, and that song came up with something 30, 40 minutes, and that was a very honest, very raw vibe of a song. And sometimes in this genre, in progressive rock and progressive metal, oftentimes things rely a lot into heavy produced things, very complex, that sometimes, we mistake complexity with depth. And I think in this situation, we try to keep things as honest as possible. So that was one of them that, it was a kind of collaboration that we got together, and the song came out in half an hour, 40 minutes, at least the demo of the song. Then, of course, you have to, refine, trim the fat or make it a little bit more aesthetic. But for me, there are other songs that are very, very, very complicated for many reasons. Cease to Be, for me, lyrically, probably was one of the most difficult songs for me to write, and not difficult in the sense of being complex, but difficult in the sense of it's very personal and not necessarily a pretty experience. So there's a lot of personal elements put into that tune. And when I was writing, I was like, oh my God, this is getting dark, but this is what this song is about.
Yeah.
We had a very beautiful moment when we were at the studio. I was in Norway recording Frederick's vocals, so I was, in the recording room, and those sessions are really intense and get to be very intimate with the person I'm working. I like when I record vocals. I like just to work with the vocalist one on one, because it's a very intense and very intimate thing. It's almost like we go in a little spaceship, and that's pilot and co-pilot, and we're talking constantly, and we need to kind of create this kind of with the word synergy.
Yeah.
And we were actually recording that track, Cease to Be, and there's one particular lyric that I was explaining to Freddie. It's like, hey, just so you know, this lyric is about this.
Right.
If you're curious, I can discuss the lyric, but he said to me, oh, is that what you're talking about? It's like, yes. And he said to me, oh, you morbid son of a bitch. That's verbatim what he said. And then we started doing the takes of that particular section. I told him, so you get an idea of where this is coming from, what the vibe is. And halfway through the next couple of takes, he's like, hey, just stop. I am getting very emotional about this. I'm thinking of my grandfather. And he started crying. And I think that was just a beautiful moment. Of course, maybe he wasn't reminded of something necessarily amazing, but the fact that he connected with that thing and he put that emotion in that performance, I think that was something beautiful. So yeah, that for me was one of the difficult tracks to talk about. Yeah.
Well, okay. I got to wonder, because you sort of touched on a question that popped into my head, and we had our own psychic synergy for a minute there as you talked about him reacting emotionally to your lyrics. Is that for internally a little moment where you go, yes, nailed it?
I mean, of course. I think, it depends on the perspective of for me, and I think for us in general, like that's I think what I love about writing music with these people.
Yeah.
I think the aim is not about getting on stage or releasing a record to be like, look, I'm amazing, look at me, which is kind of an energy sometimes in prog rock, of like people not engaging on stage and just look at my hands, I'm just great,
Yeah.
So for me, and I think for the band in general, we have this intention of creating something that people can connect with.
Right.
So when you see people connecting emotionally, that it's so satisfying, that it's so rewarding. Along my career, the most significant moments is hearing or seeing these things. In my past, someone wrote to me about some previous work of mine saying, hey, this track helped me a lot when I lost my mother through a whole process. And that's such a beautiful thing, to be able to become part of the experience of someone else, and that music kind of spoke to them in those moments. You cannot put a price tag on that. That's beautiful. So to see Frederick also connecting with that, of course, is a sense of, wow, okay, there's something here, because there's a point that the music stops being yours, it stops being the band's, it starts being the listeners.
Yeah.
So that was a beautiful thing, and of course, it makes you feel, all right, good. So the purpose of music is actually happening here. Like he's connecting with it. That is really, really special.
Yeah. Nothing like immediate validation, right?
I mean,
Yeah.
it could be. I mean, I won't say Sally would say like it would be a validation, but an achievement. I would call it rather than a validation. Yeah.
Gotcha. Fair enough. And talking about the process of writing the album, as we are, like, my understanding was a lot of the process in the first album was you and Eric kind of exchanging ideas back and forth. And this one you guys walked into, and this was like a full band collaboration from the start. Plus, you added Miguel to the mix. I got to wonder, to a degree, how much does that feel like a growth of the original band and the original synergy versus almost like walking into a whole new band at that point?
There's a couple of things. Yes, for the first record, it was the middle of the pandemic. Remember, that was the thing.
Sure.
The pandemic.
Yeah.
And we were far away, and we were working on an album before we had a label. All those things that are kind of nerve-wracking. Um, for this record, yes, there was some ideas of some songs starting that way, kind of jamming together. We're also really far away, and some of those ideas were good. Some of those ideas were more like the moment, and when you looked at them outside, it's like, maybe we need to work on those things.
Right.
So those ideas that came, some of them became seeds of songs that will come later, right? Like, right, maybe from this jam, this couple textures are cool. Let's take them and develop them. This is, playing prog sometimes is the element of keeping a jam is not necessarily part of the genre. It's the element of, as well, the composition of, putting a theme beforehand and then you repeat it later. All those kind of things are very difficult to do on the spot when you're improvising, right? When you're improvising, you can create a sense of an arc and energy, which is very valuable, and that's something you don't get when you are writing with pen on paper or on your computer or alone. You miss that interaction of the energy or the dynamics, all the things that are very beautiful and very difficult to recreate alone. So that was really cool. And some of those ideas became, they made it to the record. Some of these got at least put in the fridge for the next record or whatever happens. And the other ones, we continue kind of in a similar vein of what we did for the first record, just purely of it's a good way it works, right? So Eric would send some ideas, send it over. There's always, an opening for feedback. There's always opening for, like, when Eric sends something, he will never expect me to play whatever keyboard line he demoed, and leave alone myself. Eric's a very good keyboard player. But I'm a terrible guitar player. I can play some stuff, I can play some riffs, but you put me next to Eric is like putting an ant next to, a mammoth. I don't know. Eric is an incredible guitar player.
Yeah.
So there's this element. All right, just do your thing. This is what I came up with. But normally that works very well in the sense of someone will take a project and that person is kind of in charge of the project. It's like, you have the accounting department that takes care of the accounting department, right? You can still ask the guy on the graphic design areas, like, what do you think about this? But, at the end of the day, that person is taking care of that project. So normally we work that way and it works very well. So I think what happened with this record too is that we were a little bit more free with the songwriting. A little bit more exploring in some areas. For me, it's also going back to a more prog sound that maybe for the first record I was trying to stay away from. There's some prog elements, but they're not the typical, long solos or anything like that. So it was a sense of being honest with the songwriting and letting the song be like, all right, this song needs or actually works to have a long instrumental bit in the middle. Okay, fine. Let's just do it. So we're open to that, and in that sense, was really cool to be like, hey, Eric, help me out with this song. There was a couple times that I was kind of stuck, and I was like, hey, man, I'm stuck with this. Can you just work on this? All right, cool. I'll take that project and I'll work on joining the dots from this section to this section. Or Miguel will be like, hey, why don't you reprise the Night of Veils thing on the last track? That would be very beautiful. I love that section of the record, and it only happens once. Okay. So those things are very helpful to have that interaction and have that feedback of everyone involved. And I think that's just a reflection of a unified or more unified band. So yeah, long answer, but I think irrelevant.
It's a complex topic, so a long answer is fitting. So I'm curious, what would you say in terms of new dynamics or sound or approaches did Miguel bring to the band on this time around? What did he bring that was new?
I mean, many things musically, and this is a thing that I see very, very, very often, that being in a band is like 30% is the music. Honestly, they're all the 70% is all the things that people don't see. People just see, they got a record out. Okay, they just make music. I think people think, just get together, write the music, and it's out. And it's a lot of things, especially now being, in the world we live in and the music industry we live in, that you have to do a lot more than just the music. You have to be doing admin work. You have to, work like things that people don't think about, like a website or
Yeah.
the social media, videos, all these things are not necessarily as fun, but they need to be done.
Yeah.
So in that way, like Miguel's been a super hardworking dude from the beginning. He's very self-motivated. He's he's like, I'm gonna do this, and next day you realize he's done this. Like he did the video mixing and the whole editing and all that stuff for the 2 live releases we did this year of Paradigm and Skeletons. Musically, of course, he's a totally capable, absolutely technical musician. So that also is amazing to have someone that you can be sure that's not gonna be a worry. And as I mentioned, that's a 30%, but like he's gonna be on stage and he's gonna be killing it. He has the energy as well. He understood, like, look, man, we're trying to give an experience here to people, and we're trying to be, not to be come across like those musicians. So look at me, I'm amazing. It's more like we're giving you a moment. You're here. Let's have a good time.
Right.
And musically, of course, he has a very technical playing. He has that perfectly. So with Miguel, if you tell him, wow, what about we thought we tried this? He's like, yeah, no problem. He brought up some more, he's more of a prog fan, so he brought a little bit more that direction, which I think is a really good thing to have different sometimes directions when you're working on stuff in different perspectives, and coming up with, okay, what was best? This is a great perspective, this is a great perspective. So all in all, is he's been a seamless addition to the band, and he's been adding so much, not only musically, but outside of the other things, which is 70% of what's been in the band. Yeah.
That's funny because I think in all, like, your interview number 94 in my history, and I'm thinking I can't recall somebody talking that much about the behind the scenes things. I'm going, that does sound like such a key thing, like the personal relationships, the shared responsibilities that go on beyond simply composing and playing music that often doesn't get talked about.
I'm surprised. I mean,
Yeah.
I guess to a degree, it's kind of like keeping, some people want to keep that image of, oh, I'm the musician, I don't deal with this kind of things. But the reality is, no, it's it. And and I've been in the industry for quite some time now, and that has been the case, and actually getting more and more difficult to be in the industry too. So that's the first thing when people ask me about this, and I have younger people approach me and ask me for kind of some guidance. I'm like, right, look, I haven't won 20 Grammys, but I can tell you what I've done, and I can tell you that, yes, it's you have to remove that idea if you think you're only going to be making music. That is the fun part. Getting on stage is the fun part. Releasing a record is the fun part. It's the other things, and that is the majority of the work. So you really have to love what you do, because it's time consuming. It's basically like having a job sometimes, and a job that sometimes, or most of the times, doesn't pay. That those parts don't necessarily pay, but you have to really believe in what you're doing, and you really love it, to be able to put in this work and make it work. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. That idea of someone else coming and discovering, doing it for you, unless you have a lot of money to spend, which is not happening anymore.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen.
Yeah. And especially, let's be honest, in the world of prog, nobody's probably becoming super, super rich these days. That's not usually the way it goes. So to me, there's a certain upside to that, because that means people that are there because they're passionate about it. And it's not a paycheck. It's not about partying. It's not about, the drugs and the alcohol and all that stuff. It's because people are dedicated to their craft. And I think that brings out some of the best of it. And that's why, as a genre, it's pretty well thriving right about now.
And one of the few ones that, people ask me, like, you still sell records? Yeah, people actually buy vinyl. And when I talk to someone who's completely alien to this genre, they're like, oh my God, really? Yeah. This is one of the people value the artist, but also, it's not like in pop music or that you can release a hit, all of a sudden you're super big, and then people forget about it. It takes time to gain someone's trust. That's kind of how I see it. Like, profiles are like, yeah, okay, that's good. Good effort. I'll see the next one, and it's always a guy stroking the chin in the back of the venue as well. Look, that's all right, that's good. But if they're like, all right, these guys are good, and I like these guys, they really are loyal. I would say that's one of the beauty of this genre. So yeah, it takes time, but it pays its dividends.
Yeah, indeed. Now, you mentioned briefly, I guess you were changing your approach a little bit this time around in terms of how you approached your keys and your sounds compared to the first album. Can you talk about that a little bit more? It sounds like, because I know the first time you were, I think, really looking to establish that strong identity as TEMIC separate from the others, as you said. Um, what's your approach when it comes time to deciding, well, this needs more keys, this needs less, this needs this kind of sound, this needs something ambient, whatever?
I mean, it's a lot. It's a very open question. Again, buckle up. But okay, let's think about parts.
Yeah.
Um, in terms of like, yeah, when I talked to Eric about building this band about TEMIC, I wanted to do something separate what I've done in past in my career. So I wanted to kind of step away from that and focus on at that time what I was really into and what I was feeling. Um, musically, in that for the first record, TMT, I wanted to have a much more electronic sound because it's a music that I nowadays I very rarely listen to metal, to be honest. I
Mm.
listen to a lot of 80s music, IBM, sorry, a lot of industrial drum and
Yeah.
bass, music that has the energy of metal, but is centered on the sound design and the expression of that. And that's something that has been a big part of my expression, I think. I've never been the kind of guy who only focuses on shredding and playing quick runs with the same sound over and over again. For me, sound is the most important thing in music, at least in my music. Um, and I said the music that I work on.
Yeah.
Um, and for this record, for Ceiba, I wanted to have a record that felt very ambient like. I wanted a record that felt wide. And I felt like maybe the first record, TMT, was very focused on keys. So to avoid that, my contributions on this record, my first demos, most of them were written on guitar.
Mm.
So it was an experiment, firstly, because, you know, I was a pretty decent guitar player in my teens, but then I completely dropped it and I just focused entirely on the synthesizers. So it took me a while to kind of regain some of my chops and be able to be at least a good rhythm player or a, always say, adequate rhythm player. And writing those stuff, or the demos on guitar that helped me thinking differently of the songs. So focusing the themes on that and very, very minimal keys. Eventually, when it came to actually work on my keys, I was like I work as a session player. You know, when
Yeah.
someone asked me to do some sessions, the first thing I do is step away and listen and see what's missing. That's my first question I ask myself. It's what's missing on the track, whether it's musically, whether it's sonically. You know, musically could be like, oh, there's a lot of rhythm, not enough harmony, or maybe the vocals feel a little bit weak. Maybe I can add something to emphasize the vocals so they feel with more presence, with more energy. Um, or maybe there's a lot of information here. So what I should do is just step back and just complement the canvas, just create a space, a sense of space. That's something I love doing. So that helps me. And for this record, I wanted to have a lot of that very wide, very ethereal sound of the record. It has kind of a nostalgic feeling to me in the sense of it feels very open and very wide.
Yeah.
So I've worked on a lot of binaural sounds. I don't know if that means anything for the gigs. I'm happy to explain that later, but just basically sounds that you perceive them as one sound,
Yeah.
but they're completely different sounds left and right. So they give the illusion that it's a psychoacoustics illusion that you're in a very, very big field. Imagine yourself at the top of a mountain and looking at the landscapes. What you hear on one ear will be completely different what you hear on the other
Right.
ear. That when you're in the room, you hear reflections, so you hear things bouncing back to
Yeah.
you, and so it gives you the feeling that you're in a smaller place. So that was one of the things I did for this record a lot. Um, and as I said, like, you know, there's tracks that are very complicated, like Cease to Be being one. And I am actually not playing a lot on that track. You know,
Yeah.
mostly creating atmosphere. A couple of in verse two, I'm doing more of like an arpeggio, but I'm all creating sounds and creating a sense of space.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's good to have the song in mind and have the what the intention of the song is from the very beginning. So then you make the choices of like, I'm not playing more, but I don't have to play a lot because this stuff I'm adding is creating this sense of I wanted to achieve, or the song needed to uh, be emphasized. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully I think I cover all your questions on this.
Very thoroughly. And as a matter of fact, I think you gave me a little bit of an epiphany, a realization there, because till you were talking about it, I'd forgotten about it for a moment. I remember listening to the album at one point thinking, it's really interesting what's going on when they're doing vocal harmonies and the backing vocals. To my ear at that moment, it actually seemed like there was ever so slight separation time-wise, so that they were still blending, but they sort of had their own space in between. And I thought, is that that binaural effect you're talking about there, where it's like it creates a little bit of space? Because a lot of times they're very, I'm used to hearing backing vocals and harmonies and things like that, very, very synchronized. And it seemed like there was just this slight temporal shift, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, I mean that definitely is part of it. For instance, Eric, he did the majority of the backing vocals,
Yeah.
and what we did with Fredrik in Norway was the leads, the doublers, which is a technique for people that don't know about this. Is like you have the lead vocals in the center, and then you re-record the same lead vocal with a slight some difference, so you can put one on the left channel, on the other one on the right channel, and it gives this illusion, the same illusion we're talking about, like the vocals are kind of bigger. And I sang a couple of baritone backing vocals, mostly singing an octave lower than Fredrik, or sometimes 2 octaves lower. But Eric is kind of guy who likes to keep things as real as possible, and I really appreciate that. On today's sound, it's not today's sound. It's been around for 20 years. That guitars are super quantized, drums are super quantized, keyboards are super quantized. That every band sounds exactly the same, and they've sounded the same for the last 20 years, and that's why now you enter a prompt on AI and it sounds exactly like those bands, because it's just not a real sound. So Eric has this kind of, he's never explicitly said it, but I notice he's a guy who wants to kind of, the way he sounds on the record, he sounds exactly like that live. It's incredible, and oftentimes I've been like, hey, I hear a little bit of like intonation thing that you maybe heard hit the string too hard. And he's like, yeah. So like, oh, okay, fine. It's super cool to work with someone like that. That is just keeps it real. It's an amazing feeling of how we sound on the record is how we sound live, and that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting to think, I guess, in terms of how the various influences come together within each of you as musicians to create these different things. And I think back to, you did some work for a while with Devin Townsend, and I think of him as someone who brings what I guess I like to call subtle complexity, as opposed to in your face overt complexity. That there's a lot going on there, and it's almost cinematic in its approach. And I'm kind of curious what your time with Devin added to your personal repertoire as far as sound design.
I learned a lot from him. And what you said is absolutely spot on. Like when I work with him also live, I'll first listen to a track. So I was like, all right, cool. When I actually got to work on them, is probably one of the most complex things I ever done. It doesn't sound like it, because it's a combination of a ton of simple elements, but trying to play. I was oftentimes playing 4 different parts at the same time, and the level of mental independence to be able to play those parts and changing sounds, and also for him sound in that way. I think we are on the same page of sound for him is probably even more important than the actual composition. For me, I think on the same level, like sound and composition are equally important. But I learned some tricks from him. I learned some delay tricks he uses, the way he positions his delays, and I loved that. That something I kind of put in my arsenal, and that's one of the things I love about working with people. That you get to see the actual gears, right? You get to see, how is this done? I mean, there's things I still haven't figured out how he does it. He is insane. Like the way he works is super quick. I was working very closely with him during the pandemic, and he will send me one track one day, and he's like, I'm gonna start another track, so don't worry about it. Work on this track, and I'll send you the next track soon. The next day, he'll send me a full track that it was a demo, but it sounds basically like a release, like drums perfectly, vocals perfectly, quad tracked. He always does a lot of quad trackings. That there's a trick also I learned that I use on this record, that he records his vocals 4 times and gives that illusion of being like very wide and very almost ethereal, and that thing's a beautiful sound. But the next day he'll send me a fully fledged demo, and that was very impressive. I still don't know how he is so productive and so quick. I came to terms accepting the fact that it takes me much longer. Eric's the same. Eric is a very quick producer. Like, all right, I wrote this. They go, for me, it's just, I don't know. I'm just very thorough, and it takes me a lot of time. And I wish I was faster, but at some point, I also learned to accept that this is my process, and this is also the way I do it. And I am very intense on the minutia sometimes. But it's good to see all the people that I admire doing this, and I think I think at some point maybe I'll push myself towards a direction to see what happens, right? To away from my comfort zone. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that perfectionism can be a very handy tool at times, that attention to detail. It also can be that thing that makes it really tough to say when the product is finished, because there's almost always that ability to go, "Wait, I could add one more thing here. I could do something else here." Do you find yourself caught up in that at times? Like it's not really ever finished. It's just I stopped working on it.
Yes and no. I mean, I think my process has gotten much better now.
Mhm.
Um, I kind of came out with my own set of rules to say, right? So for me is I like the compositions to have the feeling of an improvisation, that natural element. So most of the times when I start kind of working on something new, I like to think about them as just a jam.
Yeah.
And most of the times that's how we start. And just like, the band started just jamming on things that kind of felt natural at the moment, I think there's something very beautiful. And then you can actually, use the composer hat to start getting a little bit more like, all right, let's add this, let's change the arrangement, or maybe, cut one repetition, because normally when you jam, you're very long with a mental process, and you can condense a little bit more. Um, yeah, so for me, when I come up with these demos, or that normally come from a jam or a moment of just improvising, it's not a song for me. It's not a demo worth keeping unless there is a chorus and there is a good melody. So I need to have two parts of the song for me to be like, all right, now I know, because then I can come back
Yeah.
with a different hat and be like, all right, let's now flesh this out. And so in that way, also helps a lot being in a band, because I am the guy who gets bored very easily. My brain. And there were moments that I, put a demo. I was like, I don't know about that part. Maybe I'll chop it out of the record because I don't know. And Miguel like, no, what are you talking about? That part staying. There was another time like Eric was like, no, 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 like that's a good part. Bring it back. So that's also very helpful to have that kind of feedback of when people, tell you, hey, this is good as it is.
Yeah.
Let's leave it. Let's work on something else. And I think I sometimes need that. If I am left to my own devices, I can be a danger to myself in that regard. But that helps. And in general, also kind of keeping in mind that um, you never finish a piece of work. You just walk away from it. That's not my quote. It's a motto that people
Yeah.
say, but it is very true. You have to remember that when you feel good enough to be like, I'm good enough with this. I think I'm proud of this. And also it keeps the first emotion that I'm trying to convey. It also helps a lot. Trying to impress, more thinking, is this conveying the message? Yes. Okay. Could it be better? Yes. Could it be worse? Yes. But
Yeah.
this is a good moment to be like, all right, I'm gonna focus on something else. And most of the times then when I come back, it's like, yeah, that was actually good. It was a good moment to walk away.
Yeah. Nice. Which kind of takes me into another thought as well, is like thinking about, it's the band's second album. There's been a big shift between first and second. And when I think of other bands in those kinds of positions, where oftentimes they are maybe still searching or looking for or developing their identity. Uh, where do you feel TEMIC is at this particular point in their development? Are they still searching? Have they arrived? Where do you think you're at?
Um, I mean, I do agree with what you say that bands are looking for their identity at the beginning. Um, I mean, I went through that too. I mean, I've been part of like a ton of records. But I think that also is a reflection on how you are as a musician. You know,
Sure.
the maturity as a musician, where and what position of your life you are as a person too. You know, I feel like, as I mentioned, when you not everyone, but I do have the feeling that people maybe on the first record they try maybe to impress a little bit too much, or maybe it's a lot of elements of regurgitating all those people you admire and trying to kind of give the sound. Oh,
Mhm.
if I sound like that, people will like me, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but in this case, I don't feel we're in that position. You know, Eric is a very well accomplished musician. You know, he's done a ton of things. Uh, I would like to think of myself that I'm someone who's done a lot of stuff, and I actually have come to terms with who I am
Yeah.
musically. As I mentioned, I'm not really a metal guy. I listen to some metal. But to this point in my life, I don't really enjoy it that much. I enjoy all the types of music. I enjoy all the types of energy,
Yeah.
and that's something that I wanted to be very clear of what kind of energy this band was about. I think another thing about TEMIC with that we discussed with the guys is I think the ethos of the band in many ways is not to repeat ourselves.
Yeah.
Uh, just this record is the way it is, and we don't know what's gonna be with the next record because it's not. Fortunately, I think like with experience and with you can call it reputation or the history that as individuals we have, I think it's very well defined who we are, or it's very well defined as individuals who I am, or who Eric is, and what he likes, what he doesn't, what I like, what I don't.
Right.
You know, and I think we're not trying to get that from outside. What we're trying to do is create something with those tools and put them outside, and trying to kind of convey a message through our music.
Yeah.
So I think that ethos has been very well established. It's been very well established as well when we discuss that complexity is only a vehicle. So if that is a vehicle that needs to be used to achieve the message of the track, so be it.
Yeah.
If you need to do a simple track, like I mentioned, Broken, there's going to be a single, which is kind of
Yeah.
antithesis of prog, then so be it, because
Yeah.
that track, that's what is conveying the message. So I think that identity has been established. There's all elements like sound, you know, we incorporate new elements from the sound. On the first record, I remember telling the guys, like, I don't want to use an orchestral sounds. I've done enough of that in my past. I want to focus more on synthesizer sounds.
Yeah.
I only use on one track, only, you know, in the first record, I don't think I use a piano at all. A
Right.
piano sound doesn't happen at all, which is, you know, you think about keyboards, you think about piano and strings and organ. That's the
Sure.
first thing you think about.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this record, same thing. You know, I try to stay away from that, but there's a couple of tracks that I use some orchestral elements because they were needed, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so I hope that kind of answers the question. The position
Yeah.
we're now, the ethos of the band's been established from the very beginning, and it's a very comfortable thing, very nice thing to have. And we want to carry on, of course, exploring whether, you know, within this realm, and who knows how the next record is going to be like. It's not like
Right.
we're trying to repeat what we've done and just be like, all right, if the next record is another prog record that feels like this, that's amazing. If
Mhm.
we are feeling in a different direction, what, so be it. You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of well, where we're trying to go is just to be honest with the music.
Yeah. Mm. In my world, that's the best thing you can do, really.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'm curious then. I presume there's going to be a tour in the works after this. I don't think I've read of one yet, and I'm kind of curious where that. If you have anything in the works, like specific dates, anything you can share as of yet?
Yeah, so we've announced there's more dates to be announced, but we have some shows in Europe starting October 15th, I believe, in starting Milan. We're doing some European dates, and there's more to announce. So we're hoping to go from 15th of October all the way to first week of November. That's what we're working on.
Yeah.
Next year as well, getting some dates already. We were invited again to Cruise to the Edge, which is amazing. So it's a lot of good fun, and also one of the few experiences where you can actually share with your family. You know, I bring my
Yeah.
wife. Eric last time he brought his wife and his 3 kids, and his parents also came. You know,
Yeah.
it's just a really nice place to be. And you're like, oh yeah, we have to play a show, and you keep hanging out. It's very cool.
Nice.
And you know, working on some of the shows in different territories we haven't played before. So
Yeah.
that's exciting. You know, it's always very nice to see this exploring and start, you know, opening up the markets, and you know
Right.
that's a rite of passage too that has to be done. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, now that you say that, I do think I recall there being some European dates. It probably didn't stick in my head because, as usual, I'm in the wrong country at the wrong time. As as always with a lot of these bands I want to see. On the bright side, I will be seeing you on Cruise to the Edge. That'll be our first time around on that. So looking
Awesome.
forward to that. Yeah, very, very cool. So nice. What do you most look forward to bringing to the stage, and is there any of them that you think of, "Man, we made this complex, it's gonna be hard to play live," and you dread it a little bit?
Yeah, well, that's kind of a cool thing though. I kind of like that. I mean, I'm a bit kind of enter stress mode because it takes me a long time to prepare for a tour, especially when playing material that hasn't been played live before.
Ah,
Because
yeah.
for me, it's not only sitting down and starting practicing, it's the uh, doing the sound design bit, and that
Mm,
takes me ages. More or less, takes me 1 week per to just do the sounds for one song. Takes me about a week. So I need, like, you know, if we're playing 5 new songs, we're playing 6 new songs. I need 6 weeks to do that, and then the actual learning process.
yeah,
So that bit is not fun. Once the sounds are up and running, then like, oh, okay, I just have to focus on actually playing my instrument.
right.
Right, that's okay. That's I don't mind it being able to. I actually enjoy practicing. I also, throughout the years, I developed ways of practicing that is much more effective. You know, when I was a student, I used to be the guy who was like, I need to practice 8 hours a day, all in once, and it didn't work. It was
Yeah,
just very painful. Now I figure out a way to practice in a much more effective way and be able as well to have a life, you know,
right.
because otherwise it's life consuming. Um, so yeah, I think, and the difficult, yeah, there's some tracks on this record that, oh my god, this is this is gonna be fun. There's some other tracks on the record that I'm like, that's easy for me, but my god, you know, Miguel has told me, oh yeah, I'm suffering a little bit with this. But that's a cool thing, you know. It's really amazing when you go on stage and you playing those things live. It's always like, for me, when the first times we played the Tarj Marme Theory tracks live, it was such a rewarding experience being on stage and seeing people enjoying and having a good time, and then at the same time creating kind of like a time tunnel in my head and going back to being alone in my wife's
Hmm,
parents' basement, writing that. All right, I'm gonna write a sketch, and I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm gonna start a song, and all of a sudden, it's such an I cannot put it into words, but just an emotive, very rewarding feeling to do. So in this situation, yeah, it's gonna be a lot of work. Preparing the sounds is a lot of work, and it's a lot of alone work. But when you're on stage, and also knowing these guys are incredible, all of them are incredible musicians, and having fun on stage and start doing stupid things on stage, it really is a good time, and it's so rewarding and so cathartic.
yeah,
So I'm really looking forward to that. You know,
right.
the technical elements is right. I have to practice. I know that.
Yep.
I've done that. I
Yeah,
know I have to do
yeah,
it.
yeah,
And yeah.
yeah. It happens, I know a lot of a lot of artists strive for that perfection on stage, and yet the little errors are what kind of make it live, that make it human.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like, it's I've after that we had this conversations of the show, and I'm like, look, I know this was not a perfect show, technically speaking,
yeah,
but I'd rather have this type of energy live and having this much fun
yeah,
than having the perfect show and not engaging. Because then the perfect show becomes about you,
yeah.
like about your ego. It becomes about like, I am perfect. Look at me, and look, I'm perfect. Just my perfection is enough for you to
Yeah,
have a good time. And I think it shouldn't be about yourself. You're a musician. It shouldn't be about you and your ego. It should be about the people there and having a time and going there to see you and going to have an experience. You don't know what they're going through,
Yeah.
And to have that moment, I think that's much more important. And I think in this genre, sometimes that gets forgotten. I think
You read
sometimes
my mind again.
it happens. So yeah, 1,000%. Like, of course, you don't want to be complacent
Yeah.
and be like, oh, not be on top of your craft. Of course, I mean, you know that, but it's a different part of the brain. You're like, all right, I have
Yeah.
to practice this a bit more. But seen musicians that go on stage or they play the wrong note, they're like, and it's very obvious they miserable because they wrong note or because someone else played the wrong note and they get angry and like, come on, dude, it's
Yeah.
your ego needs some humbling. This is not about yourself. This is about the music and the people coming to have a good time.
Yeah. No, exactly. So, Diego, it has been an absolute pleasure chatting with you. I'm so glad we got to do this. I'm so glad that my snafu timing-wise didn't screw this up. So it's been an immense pleasure meeting you and talking with you. I really appreciate your insights.
Oh, likewise, man. It's been a lot of fun. I think I talked a lot, but
Yeah.
hopefully
Yeah.
all to the point. But yes,
Anybody watching this is here for you, not for me. Nobody cares what I have to say.
I do care. It's all
I
good.
appreciate that. Well, thank you so much, sir. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care, enjoy the weekend, and be good to yourself.
Well, thank you very much, Dave.
Right.
Lovely meeting you.
Sending a big thank you out there once again to Diego Tejeida of TEMIC for joining me. Diego, thank you so much. It was such a pleasure to meet you, and I really enjoyed you sharing your insights with me about how you go about producing your music and how you approach live performance, and certainly all the thought that went into the album itself. It's a great piece of work, and I wish you and the rest of the band all the luck with it, and I hope the tour turns out to be quite wonderful for you. Those of you watching, if you have not already pre-ordered or pre-saved the album, the link is in the description. So go there, find that, go out and do it. I recommend it absolutely. It's definitely worth your time. So meanwhile, thank you for watching, all of you out there. I appreciate your time. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget, hit the like, subscribe so you can follow along with more adventures in interviews and the Prog Council and whatever else proggy stuff we end up doing here. Be great to have you along for the ride. And if you want to check out the Bleeding Edge shop and see if there's a shirt or a mug or something that's interesting to you, or if you just want to buy me a cup of coffee, that's wonderful and appreciated. But mostly I appreciate you giving me your time and giving Diego your time to watch this interview. So until next time, I leave you with the usual reminders. Never fear to deviate from the norm. And as always, keep it proggy.